What's going on, everyone? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. I'm your host, Max Torres, publisher and lead editor of Ducks Digest, covering the Oregon Ducks for Sports Illustrated on Fan Nation. And we're talking about the big news today out of Eugene. Oregon hires Georgia defensive coordinator Dan Lanning. And here to talk about that today, we got Dawgs daily publisher Brooks Austin. He covers the Georgia Bulldogs for SI. Brooks, how we doing, man?
Yeah, what's up, Max? I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm great. Excited to meet the man himself today at the introductory press conference. And yeah,
Mhm.
man, I mean, people are obviously super excited about this hire. It was one of the biggest talks of the weekend. You had Lanning's brother in the Twitter Spaces
Yeah.
Friday night, I think it
Twitter
was.
Spaces are popping, by the way, Max. What? I mean, good Lord. Oregon Twitter Spaces. Now, I know they may or may not be yours. They may be other people's, but good Lord. I was at 1:30 in the morning last night over here on the East Coast. So out the West Coast is what, 10:30, 11 o'clock out there? There was like 2,000 people in there hanging out, just talking Ducks, talking Dan Lanning. So the people are certainly excited about the hire for sure.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of it was popping off just because of the uncertainty around the program.
Mm-hmm.
With Oregon fans, they're so passionate about it. They wanted a hire to come, really quickly. So people were in the spaces talking about, candidates, what they wanted, some thoughts about Cristobal's departure. But it's a really coul space, pun intended, I guess. But it's a cool thing to get into and interact with the fans. And I think that one that was going on Friday night, through the hire was like literally going the whole time. I don't think it stopped at all throughout the night, but I wanted to bring you on because obviously you know about Georgia, you know about the Dogs. You're a former college football player, so I think you got a bunch of valuable perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of, I guess we could start here. Just what impresses you so much about this year's Georgia defense? Because really, it looks like it's shaping up to be an all-time great defensive unit.
Yeah, I mean, assuming they don't give up 50 points in the remaining two games, it'll go down as, I mean, top five. I mean, you can argue 1 through 5, honestly. It's in the discussion of, early 2000s Miami Hurricanes, mid 2010s Alabama Crimson Tide. Like, I think those are the best eras of defense. And I think if you're talking about Georgia, the last 3 years, they've been a top 3 defense historically great for 3 straight years. And even that 2019 defense, I know this year's defense, statistically and box score wise, everybody talks about them, right? They throw the 6.7, 6.9 points per game during the season average at you. They'll throw those statistics. They'll talk about, how they allowed 37 points over the final 5 games of the regular season, things like that. That 2019 defense was historically great as well. They entered the SEC championship game only allowing 9.7 points per game. And we're talking about an era of college football where, teams Alabama gave up almost 20 points per game this year, and they were a top 15, top 20 defense. So not a lot of teams are doing what Georgia has done over the last 3 years, not just this year. So, and a lot of that was tied to Dan Lanning and what he was doing, calling defenses and the day-to-day, successes. And when it comes to practicing and installing these defenses and holding them to a high standard. So yeah, he was responsible for a lot of that. And it was a lot of the reason why at 38, 39 years old, this is one of the, highest ranking and fastest rising college football coaches in America. There's a reason this guy's resume is what it is, and the reason he was as highly coveted as he was even before the offseason even started. He's still, fighting and coaching for a national title, despite the fact that he's out there in Eugene right now while Georgia's in the midst of preparing for a college football playoff. But that is the world we're in with, with the early national signing day coming up in 2 or 3 days, 2 days. So it is what it is. These moves have to be made, and these staffs have to be created before Wednesday, because that's the reality of the nature of the beast nowadays. You got to make these moves, and they got to be done quickly, no matter what is at stake when it comes to the college football playoff. Look at Brian Kelly. He was down there at LSU taking a head coaching job and leaving Notre Dame before they even knew whether or not they were going to be in the playoff or not. So that's the nature of the beast right now. Absolutely crazy, man. That's what early national signing day has done, though, to the landscape of college football. It has now steered these discussions and forced these discussions to be had before the conclusion of the season. It is what it is.
Got a little bit of a two-parter for you. Obviously people are super excited about this hire. And you've been covering the Dogs. So I'm curious, what can you tell me about Dan Lanning as a coach? And then I think what a lot of people are asking, how much of a role do you think he obviously he's the D coordinator, but
Yeah.
people are curious, how much of a role do you
It's the
think he
Kirby
had this
defense,
year?
right? Is that kind of the narrative that you're hearing a lot of? Is like, why did we hire the guy that was coaching under the guy, kind of thing?
Yeah, like, because there's
Um,
Muschamp there too, so how
no,
much of a role do you think he
it's
had?
honestly, it's 100% fair question, because when you talk about Kirby Smart, when you talk about Will Muschamp, you talk about even Glenn Schumann. Like, Glenn Schumann's a brilliant, brilliant young football coach that's probably going to get some DC job opportunities this offseason, if not at Georgia. I would imagine he's going to be in the running, him and Muschamp both, as to replace Dan Lanning at the University of Georgia. But, in terms of how much credit does he get, that's a great question, because the building as a whole is really, really talented. It's got really, really good football coaches, particularly on the defensive side of the football. And if I were an Oregon fan, or if I were someone covering Oregon, if I were someone listening right now that cared or thought about, is this the successful, decision? Is this a guy that's going to, lead to success? What I will tell you is he's been around really, really smart guys. He's been around a bunch of people for a long time that have coached the game of football at a really, really high rate and a successful rate, right? This is a guy that crossed over a Saban regime for just a brief moment. He's touched those. He knows what that looks like. He knows how it's ran. He knows what the pinnacle of the sport looks like and how it's ran. Now, whether or not he deserves credit for how it was ran at the peak at Georgia, I think that's an ancillary discussion, Max. I think that's something that's outside. It doesn't matter. What does matter is he's been around greatness, he's observed greatness, and he probably is capable of greatness, just like Cristobal. I think this guy is Cristobal. This is a Bama guy, a Nick Saban guy, a Saban guy, a Kirby Smart guy. They're all under the same branch. They're all under the same tree. They teach the same stuff. Cristobal ran Oregon like an SEC program out there in the West. That's what Lanning's going to do. You guys got a turnkey operation out there at Oregon. Top 3 classes, top 5 classes, that have been circulated and accumulated for 3-4 years under Cristobal. You got an SEC guy coming out there. That's what this is. An SEC guy with more Midwest ties. Cristobal was a Miami, South Florida dude. Dan Lanning's a Kansas, Missouri dude. Like, this is what you're getting out there in the West Coast now. This is a dude that's made his hay growing up in the Midwest, and now he's going all the way Northwest. So it's a little bit different, but he's more suited for what you're doing out there, even more so than Cristobal was when he came out there.
I like that perspective. You talk about the SEC guy. I think a lot of fans are not on edge necessarily, but there's been that conversation. Okay, they brought Taggart out from Florida, they brought Mario out from Florida, and they bounced to go back out home. But with the SEC discussion around this, I'm curious what your thoughts are on what's the. I'm trying to think of how to phrase it. Just, we're seeing so many people from the SEC coming out west, I feel like, or we're constantly turning to the SEC for that next head of the program. Just what do you think that says about not only the conference, but just the state of college football right now?
Yeah, I mean, success breeds results, right? It not only breeds more people wanting to play in the SEC, it also breeds more people wanting to pull people away from the SEC. It is what it is. If you've got some of the most dominant and consistently great core programs, rather, here in the Southeast, you're going to have people constantly pick away from it. That's just the nature of the beast. When it comes to having great football teams down here, historically, great defenses at Georgia, you're eventually going to have your defensive coordinator plucked from that staff. My question to you, Max, is like, you had the guys leave for their home programs, right? Taggart to FSU, a dream job for him. And then you got Cristobal down there to Miami, a dream job for him. I think if you're an Oregon fan, again, or someone that's covering Oregon right now, I would feel comfortable in the fact that, what in the heck does a dream job look like for a guy from the Midwest like Kansas, in Missouri? Where's he going to go? He turned down the Kansas job this year in the spring when that came open because of what Les Miles was doing out there, outside of just eating grass. I mean, that when that job came available, Lanning's name was thrown around it, and he scoffed at it. He was like, I'm not doing that. And they ended up making the right hire there. And they got a good guy, I think, out there in Kansas. And I forget his name, but nonetheless, what does a dream job look like for Dan Lanning? And that's what's pulled coaches away from Oregon, right? In years past. What is a dream, like the NFL dream job for Chip Kelly? Pulled him right out. Now, I know it kind of staled around Chip out there at Oregon, but nonetheless, these guys constantly leave Oregon. They constantly leave Phil Knight. I don't know where Lanning leaves, what the next stepping stone looks like if he does end up having tremendous amount of success at Oregon. I think this might be an 8, 9, maybe 10-year job for a guy like Dan Lanning because there isn't a Georgia for Kirby Smart. There isn't an Alabama for Nick Saban. There's not, one of these quote unquote dream jobs for this guy to leave you. There's not a Miami for Mario Cristobal. There isn't that for Dan Lanning. So that might be good news for an Oregon fan base that seems like you're constantly being the program that's getting left for another school or left for another program that is the love, right? Is the first love, is the home. Maybe he settles in as a home out there, and that would be, to me, good news for an Oregon program that honestly needs. It's clear that it's successful. You can win out there. You can win 10, 11 games really, really quickly. But why aren't people staying out there, Max? That's my question. Why aren't guys staying there? It's a great place to stay. You've got a top 5 booster in college football. You got one of the most powerful brands in American sports in Nike. But yet people leave. It's weird to me. Can you explain that?
Yeah, I'll give it my best shot. I think it is weird because you look at a place like Eugene, just coming in, it doesn't look like a place that would have, top tier athletics, a football team that has gone to the national championship in recent years, back in 2015. And it's a town that's so dedicated to the football program and the University of Oregon. So I think that, some people maybe leave it because, those SEC jobs come calling and they see it as, a place to maybe get to success a little bit more easily, or maybe they leave for the NFL jobs. But that's a great question, Brooks.
It's incredible. I think, honestly, it's a top 5 job in college football to me because of what's going on in the Pac-12. All you've got to do is win 11 games, win the Pac-12, which apparently was too hard for Cristobal to do because Utah was smacking him up around. But all you've got to do is win the Pac-12 and you walk to the college football playoff. And all the resources, the facilities are incredible out there. And you're never going to have problems in terms of financially being able to staff that place, like get great coaches, keep great coordinators around you, hire the people you need to do, recruit at the level you need to do, all while being out west where USC's down. Now, Lincoln Riley being there is a problem. I'm going to be honest with you. You're not going to recruit Southern California like you have been in years past. The Justin Flows of the world probably don't end up at Oregon in future unless you get a great recruiter out there, which Lanning might turn into be. But to be honest with you, out here in terms of the guys that Georgia, I'm not going to say sources, but the word around the program wasn't, oh my God, this is the dynamo recruiter, right? When you talk about dynamo recruiters at Georgia, defensively, it's Kirby Smart that has always sealed the deal, it seems like, or feels like. At the inside backer position, it was always Glenn Schumann that sealed the deal there. Defensive backs, I mean, you got a boatload of recruiters there. Lanning kind of sealed the deal on outside backers. They sent him after those guys. He wasn't, hey, we got a defensive line target, a 5-star, you need to go seal a deal. No, they would send Trey Scott and Kirby Smart out there to do that one, not the D coordinator. You follow me? It's not that he could do those things, but they had other coaches to handle other position groups. He kind of just recruited his own, is what it felt like. We knew eventually he was going to go get a head coaching job. I thought going into this year, it was going to be Troy, Southern Alabama, UAB, like the mid-major FCS, like stepping stone, non-power 5 first-time head coaching job. That's what I thought Dan Lanning was going to walk up on. So when Oregon calls and says, hey, we got $2.5 million and we'll make you a head coach, or whatever the finalized deal was, hell yeah, he's taking that job. He's taking that job immediately. And that's about how quickly he said yes.
Yeah, you mentioned the word stepping stone, Brooks, and that kind of goes back to what we were talking about a couple of minutes ago, how optically this is kind of being viewed as a stepping stone program. And I know that Oregon doesn't want that to be the case anymore. Mm-hmm. And I just had a couple more questions for you before we get you out of here. And I know you kind of led into it with the recruiting talk there. I know you're obviously really entrenched with the recruiting coverage out there. You're best in the business in that market. Can you give us a little bit more information about what kind of a recruiter Lanning is, and what maybe some reasonable expectations would be?
Relentless, like all great recruiters. He's tiresome. I mean, he never really backs off of recruiting. That's I think the number one thing that guys learn when they come from this tree, right? This Saban now turning into a smart tree, right? Sam Pittman, a guy that's left this staff, is now a head coach, doing a tremendous job, right? Why? Because he knows how to recruit, he knows how to get guys to play for him, and he knows how to make sure a team loves him and fights for him. So that's number one. Sam Pittman's done that. Mel Tucker has left this staff. Mel Tucker's a really, really good football coach. Why? because he can roster manage, he can recruit, and he gets guys to play for him and play hard for him. So if you can check those things off, if you can recruit and you can get guys to bust their nut for you, you're going to be a good football coach. You're going to have success. And I think Lanning can check those boxes. So I don't doubt that he's going to have immediate success, especially with the way that roster's constructed out there at Oregon. Sustained success is still yet to be determined, as it is for all of these guys.
We've already seen tremendous attrition on the recruiting trail for the Ducks in the 22 class, but that's to be expected when you're a program in transition and you have a guy like
look what Napier's doing down there in Florida. He's basically tossing half the class out. He's just like, you guys were Mullins guys. We'll punt on this class. We'll figure it out in the transfer portal, and we'll holler at class of 2023. That honestly, when you get hired 2 days before National Signing Day, that's what it is. That's what it turns into. Let's salvage. Let's figure it out. Let's retain as much as we can, and then let's figure out our holes on the roster. January 11th when we get on to campus. Which, if it lasts that long, I mean, that's got to be an impossible thing to do, Max. Think about it. To try to prepare for a Michigan football team that is running it down folks' throats to try to actually win a national title while also preparing your first ever coaching staff as your first time head coaching job at a place like Oregon. Golly, what a stress level right now Dan Lanning has. And by the way, Max, prepare for him to lose his voice. He never has a voice. He sounds like this midway through the year. It's awful. So enjoy it. It's going to be great. It's going to be great interviews. That's the one thing I don't know what's going to look like, man. What's that guy going to look like in front of a camera? I've seen him one time because at Georgia, they don't do it very often. You get him like once or twice, literally, at all. And the only time he's ever done press availability. It'll be interesting to watch that opening presser. That's for sure.
Yeah, he's certainly got his work cut out for him on the recruiting trail. And I think, like you were saying, I think he can probably go through the transfer portal to build out some of this class if he needs to. And then I think on the bright side, a lot of these guys that haven't decommitted, that are still committed to Oregon, they're just slowing things down and not signing early, which I think is good for Oregon because it leaves the door open for them to come back into the picture. The last thing that I had for you, Brooks, is kind of a weird question, and I don't know how you can go about answering it necessarily, but one of the questions that I keep seeing is, are there any people in the 2022 Georgia class that might follow him? Because that class is all Southeast, so that's going to be a tough ask.
So I don't think there's no. Let's put it this way: guys that are committed to the University of Georgia, particularly at the outside linebacker position, we're talking about guys like Darius Smith. They're committed to Georgia. They didn't commit to Georgia to play for Dan Lanning. They committed to Georgia to play for Georgia. So I think those guys stick around. Again, it goes back to that discussion I had with you earlier. There's not much closing at other positions that Dan Lanning did during his time here, and that's not how Kirby Smart runs his operation either. Like if you're a DBs coach, you recruit DBs. They're not bringing you in to finish off the defensive tackle. That's not how that works. Dan Lanning was the defensive coordinator and specifically the outside linebackers coach. He primarily recruited that for 3-4 years while he was here. So those guys in this class, again, CJ Madden, Darius Smith, I don't think they're going to Oregon. I think they're Georgia football players. They're in-state guys. They're guys that want to play for the University of Georgia, not particularly want to play for Dan Lanning. Did that have or play a role in their decision to commit to Georgia? Yes. Will it have a role in potentially flipping them to Oregon within 48 hours? I don't think so. I think that's unrealistic.
Sure. Yeah, no, good to get the real perspective there from someone that's out there. Well, Brooks, this has been great talking to you, man. Before we get you out of here, where can people find more of your work? I know we're going to have some Oregon fans that want to tune into Georgia because that's their next guy.
Yeah, no doubt. You can holler at me at Brooks Austin SI on Twitter, and dogsdaily.com is where we do all of our writings. And I'm over on YouTube as well. Just search Brooks Austin. I appreciate you for having me, Max.
Absolutely, Brooks. Appreciate the time, man. If you guys want to find more of me, find me on Twitter at mtorressports, and go ahead and just subscribe to the YouTube channel, Oregon Football Max Torres, and then go ahead and give us a good review and like the podcast, Ducks Dish Podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Thanks for listening, everyone. And